Okay, in the past video, we have introduced HTML and CSS. So in this video, we're going to start working on JavaScript, which is the core of web development. And in last video, we have one problem that is now solved. So you can check here. In the last video, we showed these inline blocks are not really very well aligned. So some of them drops down by a little bit. So the problem is not in the style.css. I do not have this vertical align top this line. So I can comment it out. I will let's refresh it. You can see this is the effect that by the end of the previous video. So if I uncommented, I added this vertical line so that I ask this inline block to vertical align to the top. Then I refresh it, it will be perfectly fine. Okay, so this is something residual from the last video. And in this video, we're going to introduce JavaScript. And especially, we're going to use JavaScript to control this login.html file. Basically, we want to check if this user is really inputting an email and if this password is basically follows or guideline. Say, if we require at least 8 characters, we need to check if it's really 8 characters. Okay, so we can start by adding a JavaScript file. Let's call it login.js. JS stands for JavaScript. So JavaScript is a script that you can directly run. You can directly run it in a browser, and you do not have to write functions. It's very similar to Python. If you write something, something will actually will happen. Okay, so there are different versions of JavaScript. Earlier version, you may see a key symbol of an early version is to declare a variable with var. Then, while you can still use var in the newer version of JavaScript, it's generally encouraged to use let, say let a equals to 1, this type of syntax to declare a variable. So what's the difference between let and var is not var is a variable. Then it's something that you can change. Then in the later version, the standard split a variable into 2 cases. One is constant that you should not be able to change it, and the other thing is constant. So const a equals 1, then you cannot modify it anymore. So it provides more safety for JavaScript variables. So we have a equals 1, then we have a equals 1, we can print something. So in JavaScript, you cannot direct print because you do not have a terminal. You're not running it in a terminal. But what you can do is to use console. So in any browser, you will have a console. If you open this this developer tool, you will see this is the element. There are some different things like sources, and you always have a console here. And this console is the JavaScript console, and you can execute. You can see some output from your program, from your JavaScript program. So you can execute console the log a. Let's print a out. Then we can start try to execute it already. This is like a hello world program for JavaScript. And the question is, how can we include the JavaScript file inside the HTML file? We have to associate them together. Let's search for it. Say JavaScript include, HTML include JavaScript. So you can see, okay, it's actually very simple. This tag, let's copy and paste, come back here, then we can add it here. So our script name is a login.js. So we want to include login.js. So we can refresh this file. By the way, if you want to refresh it, sometimes you will not see your new changes. You want to have this, you can come here, network, and select this disable cache. If you have this disable cache, then so sometimes the Chrome browser will try to use the data that is cached. So it will not go to the server to fetch the file again. It will use the cache that is locally cached in the browser. But when we are developing a website, we keep changing the source code. You want to use this disable cache so that you can see the new effect. But anyway, let's go to login.html. So we are in login.html, but you can see this thing. You can see a equals to 1 is printed in this line called login.js2. So it's printed at this line 2. Okay, so it's working. So the first thing right now we want to do is to select, say, whenever user change something in this email field, we want to start to check, say, if it follows the email format. Okay, so what we can do is say they search JavaScript input on change event. So we're handling this event. Let's see if we can find some example. So here is the code, and this looks very similar to our code, right? So they have some select. This select is similar to our input. There's just a drop-down menu, and I have chocolate sundae and vanilla selection. Then they can use this. They can use this select element and then add the event listener on change. Then we use this particular syntax to define a function. Let's see how we can do it. Okay, so let's remove this thing. Let's select. Say we want to select the form, email, this input. Let's give it ID. Okay, ID equals to email input. So still the coding guideline is to use dash to concatenate the two words. So let's select it. Const select const email input equals to query selector. Can we use query selector? Document dot query selector. So we want to select it. So remember, when we use CSS, we define selectors. Then if you want to select a class, we want to use dot. If we want to use want to select a element with a particular ID, we use this pound sign. So we use this pound sign. Then let's say we want this email input. Email input. Okay. Sorry. Just pasting something. So so we're kind of not sure what it is. So if you're not sure what it is, if we have selected or not, we can just simply console.log email input. Then come back here, let's refresh. We see, okay, now it's for some reason it is not selected and we do not know what's the reason. So now it means is if you are familiar with Python, now is basically equivalent to none in Python. So it's basically means it's not selected. So let's see what's the problem. Document.query. Say we want to search for JavaScript query selector. I've never used it before. JavaScript query selector. So query selector returns the first element within the document that matches the specific selector or group of selectors. If no match found, now it's returned. Okay, selector, then this, I think this selector is a DOM string that contains one or more selectors to match. So a DOM, here you see this terminology. DOM is basically something that say this is a DOM element, this is another DOM element, this is another DOM element. Okay. So you must be a valid CSS selector string. If it isn't, syntax error exception is thrown. Okay, so it looks correct to me. Email input. I see why it cannot select it. So we can inspect this particular element. Let's see, this ID is email input, right? So we can actually also run this code directly from here. Let's run document. Dot query selector, say email unsigned email input. So it works fine, right? Actually, a very fancy feature that is supported by Chrome is that, okay, we're selecting this element and this element is shown here. If I hold on it, it can actually automatically maps to which one we're selecting here, right? So what's the problem with this code, and why we cannot select it? Why we cannot select it with the JavaScript code, and why we can select it with the code here is because the place that we place this script. So basically, Chrome will load the whole page from the top to bottom. So we'll load this CSS file. It will load this CSS file. It will not impact anything anyway because it's just a CSS file. But this thing, when it loads this JavaScript file, it will automatically execute it. So it will execute it and it will select this email input ID. And when we execute it, we do not have a title, we do not have this div, we do not have h1, we do not have this form. When we do not have this form, of course, we cannot select it. So what's the selection? What's the solution? So the solution is there. You have two solutions. The simple solution is to move this line to the bottom. Let's see if it works, to the last line in the body. So I will first load this element, place this element on the screen, then it will show up, it will execute this login.js file. Let's try to execute, see if it works. See, it works. And it's very interesting that you do not see these type of things like style, background, image, and these things. This is the last part. It will try to promote some password. But last part is an extension, a Chrome extension. We'll try to add this style, try to add this image as a background image here in this in this form, in this input box. Okay, but interesting thing here is the element that we selected doesn't have this one, which means this one is executed before last pass is executed. So I think we'll first load the page, then Chrome will execute the script of the extensions. But it works, right? It works. If we put it here, then it actually loads the form, loads all the elements in this form, then it will execute this login.js. Another solution, if you don't want to put it to the end, and if you think it's probably not safe, another solution is to start this action when the whole page is ready. So we can search for this. It's called document, say JavaScript, always put JavaScript in your search. JavaScript document ready. And we don't want to use jQuery. jQuery is a very, very popular library, but people are trying to get away from jQuery because JavaScript right now, modern JavaScript is getting more and more popular. It's getting more and more powerful. Let's search JavaScript document ready, no jQuery. Without jQuery, there's something say, okay, see, this is, you have a lot of solutions, okay? Then it's a standard based on replacement content load is 98% of the browser, though not the AE8. Who cares about IE these days? Now we can execute this one. Can copy this one. Then execute here. Put it here. Document. Okay, we need to analyze this code. We're not really introducing JavaScript syntax. I'm trying to use examples to show you how JavaScript works, because I assume you are familiar with Python. So, so we need to tell what's the difference between a Python script and a JavaScript code. And there are many things that are very, very similar. Okay, so for example, here we see document. Document is a built-in class, which represents the whole web page itself. And we can add an event listener. So it's self-explanatory, right? So it will add an event listener. So what event it is an event called DOM content loaded. So this event will be triggered after the whole DOM, the whole web page is loaded. All the elements is on the screen. Then we'll execute something. So this is something you have never seen in a Python program before. And it's actually, you can do similar thing in Python, there's no problem. So what we're doing here is that this function takes two arguments. One argument is a string, which represents what event it is. And the other, the second argument is a function. This is called a callback function. So callback function is something that I provide a function, but please call me back. When to call me back is not when this event is triggered, please call this function, please execute this function. So this is a callback function. JavaScript is not similar to, different from Python. Python is a code that you would execute from the beginning to the end. But JavaScript is more about user interaction. So you click on something or you load something, you refresh, you move your cursor, you type something, then those things are starting to change. Then you need to add event listeners so that when something happens, you need to take action. So this is why JavaScript is designed in this way. There are a lot of callback functions. So this callback function is function event. We can print the event. See, let's print. Sorry, actually you can use print, but it's more common to use console.log. Console.log event. Okay, let's print event. Let's see what information is provided there. Okay, so let's see. This event, there are a lot of fields. They're kind of its trusted type is DOM content loaded because we're listening to it. And target is the document, so it represents the thing that is the whole document is loaded, right? There are something like bubbles, cancel bubble, cancelable. There's many different things. There is a timestamp that is probably the time that it is the microsecond or millisecond that is since the starting of the whole page reloading. Okay, so so we know this is happening. Then we can remove this one. We can move these two lines here. Okay, these two lines here, and remember, we don't. I just don't want to confuse you, so I have to move this back to the top so that we know. Okay, if it works, then that means our design works. It's not because it's only executed at the end of the web page. Let's refresh it and can see this ID email input is executed. And the interesting thing is this is still executed before the Chrome extension can execute. So we have this login.js, we have this email input. So one thing I have to say here is that this is kind of the older style of JavaScript implementation. In a newer style, you can say when you define a function, you don't really have to define a function in this way. You can remove this function and you can use something called a fat arrow to represent this is a function, okay? So it's a shorthand between function, define a function. So this is the input argument, and this means this is the function itself, the function body, and we will execute these two lines. There are some minor difference between these two ways to define functions, but it's probably out of scope of this tutorial. And let's refresh it, and we see it still works. Okay, we see this email input, Now we see this query selector, we selected this email input. Now we need to come back. So HTML element, now we want to add another event listener called change and this event, right? It's a similar way that this event is something that that it's going to trigger that when user typed something, okay? So we can just copy paste this code by using say email input dot add event listener, and this event is called change. Event, still, let's print this console log event, okay? So, so semicolon, Python doesn't require semicolon, right? If you use semicolon, your automatic formatter will probably just change back for you. JavaScript doesn't tell the difference of adding or not adding a semicolon. So you can do both. I suggest adding semicolons, but you probably need to be consistent. Okay, but many times I forget about semicolons. It's if you add a semicolon or not adding semicolon, basically depends on which language you come from. If you come from C++, you may have the muscle memory to add the semicolon. So let's execute this thing. We execute, we refresh, there's nothing there. Then if we, so we want to type something. Is it printed? No, it's not printed. Okay, it's not printed. We don't know what's going on. So let's see if it's, so this is select element. Let's see if we can find an input element. Input text, the change event doesn't fire until the control lose focus. Try entering something into a field below, then click somewhere else to trigger this event. Okay, this is a very, very interesting documentation. So if I click somewhere else, see this event is triggered, right? It's very interesting. This event is type change target. So we wouldn't want this. We want something to work as we type. So HTML element input event, this is probably the thing we want. Let's say if we change to input. So I'm just keep trying and error. I haven't been programming JavaScript for a very long time. So you can see, okay, to achieve our goal, right? If we type something, then you see this, right? Very interesting. So also you can see this data is, if I'm typing backspace, then the data is not, but if I'm typing some letters, it is actually the letters that is showing up here. So we can use this letter to tell what is the content of this email address. So okay, let's look at what's this input. So what we want is actually, we want to extract the information that is currently in this email box. So I think we can use, I'm not 100% sure, but we can try event.target.value. Okay, we can try it, see if it works. Yep, SDF, right? It always print the value. Then we achieve our goal. So we want to trigger an action whenever a user types something, right? Even if they go backspace, you can see this is the input, which just works really nice. Sorry. So the next thing here we need to do is to add regular expression to check if it's an email or not an email. Then let's try to search for how to get JavaScript work with regular expression. So JavaScript regular expression. Regular expression JavaScript, and then you can always find this documentation for regular expression. So remember, when we use Python, we have to compile a regular expression. Then because regular expression is so widely used in JavaScript, they provide this particular syntax. So let's say let pattern equals to something. Okay, I'm just typing something random. We'll replace it with the email pattern later. Okay, So let's see if we can say what we can do. Execute search of matches string. So this will search test a match if a string is true or false. So regular expression, I use a regular test. Then let's see this test. The test is probably the thing we want to look at. Test regular ex. So with regular expression, you can use regular exp or use this slash representation. So we want to use test. Then let's say we want to do pattern dot test. What we want to test is event dot target dot value. Okay, so let's refresh this code. We need to print that match equals to this, then print console log match. Okay. Refresh. Then if we type S, it's a not match. SD false. SDF true. It matches perfectly, right? So we want to match if it's a email address or not. So let's find an example. Email address is probably the most commonly used regular expression. So this can search for regular expression email. And then you can pretty much find, say, either expression that checks the valid email addresses. So I would simply trust it, okay? Then this is the expression. Then we test this value. If it's match or not, we'll print a match or not. So we can refresh it. Then it doesn't match at AOL.com. Is it a match or not? No, why it's not a match? AOL.com, why it's not a match? There's something wrong with the regular expression. Oh, I think the problem is I added a space there. Let's refresh it. SDF@AOL.com. Okay, you see it's true here. That's perfect, right? So we can verify it's a regular expression or not. So let's do something. So we want to have some visual effect on saying, okay, if this regular expression, if it's a valid one, now we can show a green box around this input. Otherwise, we want to show a red box. Okay. So what we can do here is we can control the CSS style with JavaScript. So what we can do here is that if match, let's remove this one. So we need to select this. We don't need to select because the event target is already that thing. Event target is already the input. So we can, if match, what's wrong with this? Yeah, we need to print this here. So you can see this syntax is pretty much the same as Python, but the only thing is it doesn't use indentation as the level indicator. It uses this curly bracket. Okay, so most of program languages use curly bracket. Only Python uses the indentation as the block indicator. So if match, or we want to say, or event.target, let's say we want to add some style, CSS style. So we can say JavaScript change style. Okay, change border color. border color property, they say, okay, we can use this way. So document get element ID. This is actually, this query selector is not widely used style to select something. This get element ID is it's more straightforward. You don't need a pound there, but it's actually also more popular than this query selector. But anyway, what we get here is a DOM element, right? Then we can control the style by style dot border color equals to green. Otherwise, this color is red. Okay, we can give it a try to see if it works. One thing that's so it's not changing, right? It's not changing. Let's see what's going on. Yeah, I forgot one thing. So this border color is red, right? Then there's something going on. So so we can check why it's not showing. We can hover on this input. We can see this box model. You can see the border equals to 2, but why the border is not changing color? Yeah, it's actually changing color. Just when we hover on it, when it's not showing, it's probably some CSS effect caused by. I have to click somewhere else if I'm if it's the current element, then is in a gray border color. So is it because of LastPass? Just want to try to get rid of LastPass. Let's use a incognito model. It's not a LastPass problem. So this one, let's try to. So I'm afraid this it's because we're currently on this element. So the border color automatically changed by Chrome. So what we need to do here, let's try to increase the border color, border, so border size. Border, say 4px, 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 4px. Okay, we can, doesn't work in this way. It's just directly change back for 4px solid. Right. Okay. So if we're on it, we can, yeah, because it's by default it shows this current border, then it's actually add a extra border on it. That's because it overlaps with our existing border, so we have to increase the border size to be able to see our effect. So let's say sdf@aol.com. Now we can see it turned green, which is the perfect thing that we're looking at, right? So we can use this way to change the style of a particular element. You can change a style border color equals green, a style border color equals red. So if we want to say, we want to have this, make this take longer effect. So what we have tried here is to use this border to control, to just directly add this element style here, so that we can control this border, right? We can control this input, the border size of this input. But if we refresh it, because that is a one-time modification, you can see that property is not there anymore. So what we can have is, say we want to have this form. Let's say ID equals to login form, then we can control it, right? We can control this the size of this the border size of this input field. So what we are going to do here is say dot login form, not dot, but we want a pound sign. This is an ID. Then we want to have, what's that? input, right? We want to have input, and we want to control the border size. I think I can actually control the border size by using specify the border top, say 5px, border right 5px, border bottom 5px, border left 5px. Okay, let's see if it's working or not. It's not working. What's the problem? It's not even no border anymore. So can we find this one, log input? Yes, we can select this one. Border. Let me search something. CSS border size, border width property. Okay, let's use this border width property. Can we specify? Yeah, border width. Okay, which is much better. Border width equals to say 5px. Okay. Okay, it seems to be working. It automatically has this shading effect, but we can print something SDF at AOL.com. Then it turns green. So this doesn't look very beautiful, but I'm just showing you the that how we can get it done. Okay, how we can support this particular feature. So this is one way to support this feature. We can directly modify the style. And there's another way, there's probably a more elegant way that we can modify this. Why I'm saying is this is not a more elegant way, is when you work in a company, you typically have different group of people. You have your UI designer, which may work on Photoshop or these wire diagrams or these mockups, right? They design what things visually look like. Then you have programmers who write the logic of say, okay, when we have this input, when it's a email address, we should turn it green. We should turn to this style, but the programmer shouldn't really decide what the style it is. So we have two different group of people. The UI designer, they may work on mockups or they may directly work on CSS files. And the programmer should not touch the style. They should just say, okay, this is not a valid email. This is a valid email. So so how we can separate these two group of people is by not allowing to directly changing the style from from the JavaScript, but rather we need to define, say, we have different classes, and we add different classes as if we're adding labels to this particular element. So let's say we want to have this class called login form, right? It's in login form, but here we're looking at, say, we have another class called invalid email. Okay, invalid email. We should change this border color to red. We have another class, say login form valid email. Then we have this border color green. You have two different colors. Then so if it by default, then let's say border color equals to, let's say 999, gray border. Okay, so let's change this. Let's change the class here. So we can add a class here. Say we can put it empty first. Let's refresh it. Now it's gray, right? Is the color different? It's probably the same as before. So class is empty. Then here we can have another. We can add a class called invalid email. Right, let's refresh it. As you can see, is it turning green? No, it's not turning green. Why is it? So you can see still input is probably we're not capturing it. Why it's not capturing it? Still need debugging. So okay, my mistake. We need to. So we capture the class, not ID. So let's refresh it. You see it turned red. Then let's change it to valid email. And it turns green, right? So it's perfect. So we can remove this class for now. Then we are going to use JavaScript to control the classes. So let's say search JavaScript add class. How to add a class name? Say, you can find the example here. Say class list add, right? We have this class list add function. Login.js, let's come here. If it's a match, we need to find, say, event.target.class list.add. Want to add what's that? This is a valid. In this case, this is a valid email. And also, if it contains an invalid email class, we need to remove it. So we also need to search JavaScript remove class. Remove a class name. So say, can we remove it? Can we remove it? So yeah, class list remove. So in this case, we need to remove target.class list remove invalid email. Right. So the else case is exactly the same. We need to copy it and paste it here, but we just need to invert it. Let's see if it works or not. So, right, it shows green. It shows the red color. SDF at AOL.com. Then it turns green. It works perfectly. You can also verify this information by looking at. So this one, do we have the class? Do I have the class? Yes, the class is a valid email. If I'm removing this dot here, the class is invalid email. So in this way, we can separate the job. The developer, the UI designer should only modify this file so that they can change the style. What will show up if it's invalid, right? What the style will be if it's invalid. Then the programmer will only check, say, okay, it's invalid, I will mark it as invalid. If it's valid, it will mark it as valid. So they will not care about the style. So this is the separation of job. Okay, so far, I have been showing you some basic information about how to use JavaScript. You can see this JavaScript is, I would say, the core of JavaScript is more like how to interact with DOM and the user input, and how we can read information from the screen, and we can change the style of the screen. So so I hope you can start to use these building blocks to start to try different things. Although this just to give you a very, very basic start about JavaScript, you probably still need to learn a lot about more basic syntax of JavaScript. But I think I'm giving you an example, and you can use this example to get a feeling about how to write a JavaScript and what the JavaScript is, why it is so useful. So far, we talk about how to validate email, and we have this email and password here. And when user click on submit, we want it to submit to the backend. We want to say we want to really log in this user. So how can we do it? This is something we're going to introduce in the next lecture. And we are going to, so rather than directly talking about JavaScript or backend programming, we're going to give some basic introduction about SQL, because we need to start to interact with the database. Okay, so I will see you in next lecture.